Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning, and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Travel Podcast. I'm Erik doing this episode solo. AJ is sick and not going to be able to join us this week. Today, I'm going to give you a step-by-step walkthrough of booking a high-value U.S. Airways award. I'm also going to cover 5 strategies that you can use to manufacture spend on your credit card without spending any of your own hard-earned money. Alright, so I'm back in the good old US of A for the first time since 2013, and I gotta say it's really great to be back in the Motor City. I'm staying with a buddy who lives right across from the Renaissance Center in the heart of downtown Detroit. I've got a view of General Motors' global headquarters in the Detroit River. Tigers are playing good baseball, and life is good. This week I made an award ticket booking with US Airways Dividend Miles that was both the most challenging and also the most valuable of my travel hacking career. My goal was to travel in first class from the west coast of the US to Japan and spend 2 weeks hanging out with my friend Andrew in Tokyo, then stop for about 4 weeks in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam before heading back home for Christmas. The itinerary takes advantage of US Airways' liberal routing rules, which let you book an open jaw, or in my case, a stopover, on a round-trip itinerary. My original plan was to book the famous 90,000-mile North Asia award ticket that we've talked about on some of our past shows. At the beginning of April, US Airways raised the price of a business class award ticket to 110,000 miles, which is only 10,000 less than the cost of a first-class award, so spending the extra points was a no-brainer. I learned a few new things and had to exercise a lot of patience, so I thought I'd start off today's show by walking you guys through the experience. Alright, so before we get into the booking process, let's back up a little and cover how I earned the points. I've been earning and saving US Airways miles for quite a while with this redemption in mind. In early 2013, I earned my first set of miles from a bonus on the Dividend Miles MasterCard offered by Barclays Bank. The bonus was 40,000 miles after the first purchase, and that card's still available and we've linked up in the show notes. This card is churnable, which in travel hacking lingo means that you can earn the bonus more than once. This year, I signed up for the exact same card again and banked an additional 40,000 miles. In early April, the Dividend Miles program ran a promotion offering a 100% bonus on shared miles, which gave me the opportunity to buy a maximum of 50,000 miles for around 1.1 cents a piece. With taxes and fees all in, the cost of buying the miles was about $567. As a general rule, you should only buy miles if you have a specific redemption in mind. Programs can devalue at any time without notice, so it's really easy to get burned if you're just buying miles speculatively. Alright, so at this point I had enough points for my award ticket, and so let's get into the booking process. US Airways is now a member of One World Alliance, so I had some great partners to choose from, including Cathay Pacific, Japan Airlines, and American, with regular service to Japan. Domestic carriers like US Airways, American, Delta, and United are really far behind the international carriers when it comes to the quality of their first-class product, so I was determined to maximize the number of segments on Cathay Pacific or Japan Airlines. Redeeming US Airways points on their partners requires calling the reservations line. The website is pretty much only good for booking on US Airways operated flights, and even then it can be a real struggle to book online. If you're going to call an airline reservation center, it's critical to have some knowledge of your options before you get an agent on the line. US Airways agents are notorious for their lack of knowledge about their partners and also geography in general. In addition to all that, they're currently in the middle of a massive IT integration because of their merger with American Airlines, and they also just recently moved from Star Alliance to One World, so that means they changed all their partners. And long story short, it's been very difficult for the US Airways agents, so it was definitely going to be a challenge to get this booked. One World has a really cool interactive route map, which we've linked up in the show notes. And if you're booking an award, this is your first stop to get a rough idea of what routes are flown and which airlines operate those flights. The route map lets you pick an airport and see all the destinations that are served. You can also choose to include connections or just search for those direct routes. I was able to see that Tokyo had a couple of flights to the US and quite a few more that routed through major Asian hubs like Hong Kong and Kuala Lumpur. You can also filter by airline, so I was able to narrow down the options and see the Cathay Pacific flights, which was my maiden goal because they've got one of the best first-class products in the world. On to the phone booking. Calling US Airways is like playing the lottery. Most of the time, you end up getting a pretty clueless agent, and sometimes you get lucky and get a good one. I hit the jackpot on my first call and got a really friendly, helpful agent who had a very solid knowledge of the reservation system. Unfortunately, the availability in first and business class was really bad. We weren't able to find anything for the outbound flights. We spent quite a bit of time, tried all the West Coast cities like LAX, San Diego, San Francisco, and Seattle, and considered a whole bunch of routings that connected through Asia. When availability is tight, the best strategy is to find the over-water segments first and then work on the shorter connecting flights that complete the itinerary. US Airways doesn't allow both a stopover and an open jaw, so I knew that I was going to need the stopover in Vietnam, which meant that my itinerary was going to have to start and end in the same city in the US. I'm going to be out in San Diego for a friend's wedding in October, which was when I was hoping to start the trip, so my initial thought was to start from the West Coast. We weren't having any luck whatsoever with the outbound, so we ended up moving on to look at the return trip from Tokyo to Ho Chi Minh and then back to the US. The goal here is to get any segment possible nailed down so that you start to get a picture of what you'll need to do to complete the rest of your trip. Finally, we found a Tokyo to Hong Kong to Ho Chi Minh routing, and then later on a Ho Chi Minh, Hong Kong to San Francisco 4 weeks later out of Vietnam. US Airways lets you hold an award booking for 72 hours, which turned out to be critical. So I was able to lock up those flights without actually completing the whole itinerary on my first call. If you do have to make multiple calls, you just want to make sure that you get a record locator from the agent so that when you call back, you can pick up where you left off. In my case, I was heading home from Brazil. I had been on the phone for almost an hour, and it was time to get on my flight, so I wasn't able to finish the reservation on the first call. At this point, the 72-hour clock was ticking, and I had an awesome itinerary from Tokyo back to the US, but it was going to be totally useless if I wasn't able to complete the booking that made it a legitimate US Airways routing. When I got back to the US, I called back and ended up getting a couple of agents who were completely unhelpful. Somebody tried to tell me that there was a rule that they could only make 2 or 3 searches per phone call, and I had spent at least 15 minutes on hold, so it can be really frustrating. But you have to understand it's 100% worth it to make those calls and to keep trying, because eventually you will get an agent that's going to be helpful. I finally did get somebody who was going to be able to help me, and for the outbound trip, we ended up considering all kinds of routings. Weren't able to find anything direct to Asia, so we looked at routing through London Heathrow or Helsinki in Finland, and half a dozen other destinations in Europe. The breakthrough finally came when we started searching from the East Coast. We were able to nail down JFK to Hong Kong to Tokyo, which took care of the overseas segment, and I was able to get a red-eye from San Francisco to JFK to start my trip. Booking the award was a ton of work and is definitely an example of a scenario where you'd easily get your money's worth by hiring us or another booking service to do the heavy lifting for you. All in all, my trip came out to 120,000 miles and $134. It includes 4 segments in first class and 3 in business. All of them are on Cathay Pacific with the exception of the San Francisco to JFK red-eye, which is on one of American's A321s. It's one of the few 3 classes of service domestic flights in the U.S., and tickets on those are running anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000, so it was a really good deal. All in, the itinerary was worth just over $12,000 if I had bought the cheapest business class itinerary I could find on Orbitz, giving me a cool 9.97 cents per point in redemption value. To buy the same seats on all the same flights on Cathay Pacific and American would have cost me over $20,000. To recap, when calling a reservation center, you want to check out the route map and know your options. You should start with overwater segments first and then complete the smaller connecting flights that make the itinerary work. You also want to make sure you know your routing rules, so you need to be aware of whether you're allowed to have a stopover and an open jaw or you have to pick one or the other. should also be prepared to position. In this case, I really didn't have much flexibility because of how tight the award inventory was. So I had to take the starting point of San Francisco because that was all that was available. Fortunately, my buddy's wedding's in San Diego, and I was able to book a cheap ticket on Southwest, also using points, from San Diego to San Francisco to start out my itinerary. Last but not least, call in an expert to do the work. You can end up saving yourself a ton of time, and often the folks that book award tickets for a living have a really good knowledge of what the best products are and can get you a much better itinerary in terms of the quality of your flying experience, especially if you're going for those premium class tickets. Alright, so let's get inspired. Today's inspiration is one of my favorite nonprofit organizations in the world. Kiva is a microfinance nonprofit with a mission to connect people through lending to alleviate poverty. For those of you who aren't familiar with microfinance, it's about supplying loans, savings, and other financial services to the poor, primarily in small amounts. Since its founding in 2005, Kiva has enabled more than 1.1 million lenders to provide over $500 million in capital in 76 countries. They have an astounding 98.88% loan repayment rate. It's really easy to get inspired if you spend a couple of minutes browsing through the loans that are waiting to be funded at kiva.org. Each loan comes with the story of the borrower, which may be an individual or a group of people. And there's just tons of hustle. People borrowing money to buy a stove to make and sell pastries, maybe buying a cooler so they can sling ice cream treats, or maybe investing in inventory or production materials. It's definitely worth checking out. I also find it really inspiring to see that the entrepreneurial spirit is thriving even in the poorest places in the world where access to education and capital are a challenge. You can get involved with Kiva by making loans starting as little as $25. The other way to get involved is by becoming a Kiva Fellow. Kiva Fellows applicants are chosen for the program to serve as Kiva's eyes and ears on the ground, working directly with microfinance institutions and other field partners in over 70 countries around the world. The Kiva Fellowship is an unpaid volunteer position designed to increase Kiva's global impact. Applications for the current class of fellows close on May 18th, so you have less than 2 weeks. I highly recommend checking it out. It's something that I applied for and didn't get into out of college, and I still wish that I would have had an opportunity to do that. It seems like a really, really cool program. Alright, time to dive into the heart of the episode. Manufactured spending is travel hacking lingo for putting spending on a credit card without actually spending your own money. In the good old days, back in 2010 and 2011, when I was just getting started with travel hacking, there was an amazing hack out there where you could purchase coins from the US Mint and later deposit those coins to the bank and get your money back. It was a really great hack. Lots of people were doing it, and eventually NPR broke a story, and the US Mint stopped accepting credit card orders for the coins. But at that point, AJ and I would order $3,000 or $5,000 worth of coins. They'd show up in a couple of days by FedEx, and we'd stuff them in a backpack and take them out to the local bank. So that's kind of the general idea of manufactured spending. You want to put the spending on a card and then find a way to liquidate that asset that you purchased and turn it into cash so you can pay off the credit card. When you get approved for new cards with a sign-up bonus, your first priority should be to put all of your regular spending on that card. But sometimes that isn't enough. And so manufactured spending is what makes travel hacking possible for the cash-strapped college student who doesn't have a bunch of regular spending to move to a new card. Not all of us have businesses that spend a ton of money or a high personal spend, so I'm going to run through 5 techniques that will help you meet those minimum spending requirements. The first technique, and by far the most valuable that I'm currently aware of, is Amazon Payments. Amazon Payments is a network that's just like PayPal, and it allows you to send a maximum of $1,000 per month and return that money directly to your bank account without costing you a penny. There's a couple of different ways to set this up. First of all, you definitely need to have a trusted partner, and it's even better if you have 2 or more partners. Each of you will need to set up an Amazon Payments account, then link your credit cards and your bank account. There are a couple of big no-nos that are red flags for Amazon. So the way that this works is that you're going to send money to your friend, and your friend is going to be able to withdraw that money to their bank account. And So one of the first reactions that most people have is that you could send your money to the friend and have that friend send it back. So in other words, I could have my Amazon Payments account and send AJ $1,000 with my credit card, and then AJ could do the same thing and send me $1,000 back. That's a big no-no. It's going to raise a red flag, and Amazon will most likely shut down your account. It's also a no-no to have multiple accounts for the same person, especially if there's an overlap of credit cards or bank accounts. So in other words, if I set up 2 different Amazon Payments accounts for myself and use the same checking account or use the same credit card, it's pretty likely that they're going to shut you down. All right, so let's talk about the way that you actually should do this. The first way is basically a one-way send. So I could send AJ money, and he could withdraw that money to his bank account and either write me a check or give me cash. It's a little bit difficult because there's that extra step where AJ would have to refund that money to me for me to be able to pay off my credit card. The slightly easier, more efficient hack is to have AJ use my credit card to send me money. In other words, AJ is going to link my credit card to his Amazon Payments account and send the payment to me. I'll withdraw it to my bank account and pay my credit card off at the end of the month. I've done this quite a bit with having other people's credit cards on my Amazon Payments account, and I've never had any issue with getting flagged for that. The next best way to approach Amazon Payments is to have more than 2 people involved. So, for example, AJ, our friend Adausa, and I all pass money in a circle. AJ passes to Adausa passes to me, and I pass to AJ. Each of us gets $1,000 in spending on our credit card, and each of us is able to withdraw the $1,000 we receive directly to our bank account and pay the credit card. You get bonus points if you go ahead and pay your credit card automatically by setting up an auto pay out of your bank account. That way you don't ever forget to pay that bill off. I've been doing this for more than 2 years, and between AJ and I, we've generated over $50,000 in spending. The next manufactured payments hack is by using gift cards. Gift cards let you shift your spending into the future. It does require some capital because unlike Amazon Payments, gift cards can't be cashed out immediately. But it does solve the problem of hitting a tight spending deadline. So basically the way this works is that I use my credit card to purchase a Visa, Amex, or MasterCard gift card and then use that card over time for regular purchases. You can do this online. Amex has a website which we've linked up in the show notes where you can buy a gift card and they'll mail it to you. Or you can also do this at lots of different places like pharmacies, office supply stores, or grocery stores. It's not entirely free. There's typically a $4 to $7 purchase fee for each card. And in particular, if you buy cards in person, you're probably only going to be able to buy a maximum value of $500 gift card. Online is a little bit more flexible. Often you can purchase gift cards that are worth a bit more than $500. Right now, there's a great opportunity. Through May 31st, Amex is offering a promotion where they're waiving the purchase fee for those gift cards. So if you check out the show notes, you're going to see the link for Amex gift card purchase online, and there's a coupon code that you can use that should waive the fee if you do it before May 31st. The third method for manufactured spend involves prepaid reload cards. You may have seen these at a pharmacy or grocery store. A couple of the most common brands are Vanilla One or Vanilla Reloads, PayPal Reloads, Reload It, and there's a whole bunch of other products. They're basically money-storing instruments that you can purchase, and you load that value onto the card. Then you can use those preloaded cards to fund an online account, often like PayPal or Bluebird, which is similar to PayPal and Amazon Payments offered by American Express. So, in other words, the process here works like this. You go into the store, you pick out a couple of those cards off of the rack, and you go up to the cash register and ask them to load $500 on. Like the gift cards, there's going to be a purchase fee. But once you have that preloaded card, you can log into your PayPal account and load the funds into PayPal that way. There are a couple options for liquidating the money. You can withdraw via ATM, but you don't want to do that too much because sometimes those prepaid networks will shut down your account if you use the ATM option too often. The other way is that you can use those to purchase a money order, or you can also use the account to pay bills that you can't normally pay with a credit card. So those would include things like rent, tuition, or utilities, where they're not directly accepting credit card payments. You can often use the bill pay feature. So for example, Bluebird has the ability to send a check out. So if you load your Bluebird account with one of these prepaid instruments, you say add $500 or $1,000, you can then send a check for $500 or $1,000 to yourself or to your utility company, your university for tuition, whatever your choice is. The primary challenge with this method is finding a vendor that's going to accept credit cards to purchase the load product. So most cases, a lot of stores are going to tell you that you have to do it with cash. So it can take a little bit of effort. Sometimes they'll let you do it with debit cards, and in some cases they'll let you do it with credit cards. Take it slow and don't get in over your head. This is the kind of thing where you don't want to end up loading a ton of money onto a card and then having trouble liquidating it and not being able to pay off your credit card bill and incurring some interest. So if you're going to do this, you either want to have some savings to make sure you can cover your credit card bill if it takes a while to figure out how to unload the card, or you want to take it in small amounts to start. Purchase a card that has $20 or $50 and see if you can make that work, and then scale up to larger transactions. The fourth method for manufactured spend is actually through Kiva. As if helping entrepreneurs out around the world wasn't cool enough, Kiva is also a way to manufacture spend. You can fund loans via Kiva with a credit card. They're actually processed through PayPal, and PayPal waives the transaction fee for Kiva because they're an awesome nonprofit. When the loans are repaid, you can withdraw the cash to your bank account. So Kiva loans have a loan term of anywhere from 3 to 24 months. And so to do this method, you're going to need to have the cash to float until that loan matures. So in other words, you're not going to be able to get the money back as cash right away, and certainly not in time to pay off your credit card bill. So here's how my process works. Each month around the 1st, I log into Kiva and withdraw my balance to PayPal. And then from PayPal, I withdraw it to my checking account. Loans are being repaid on an ongoing basis, so I almost always have a little bit of money in my account when I check. Then I pick a couple of new loans to fund, and I lend anywhere from $50 to $200, depending on my financial situation for that month. And I always add $50 or $200 in addition to whatever I've withdrawn. So I'm effectively using Kiva as a savings account. Even though my portfolio doesn't earn interest, and that's a key point. Kiva is a nonprofit. They don't charge interest. The microfinance institutions that they work with on the ground, so say the bank that's lending in Kenya, they do charge interest. But Kiva doesn't charge interest themselves, and as a lender, you're not going to earn interest. However, you can easily rinse and repeat each new investment every 6 months if you're picking loans that have a 6-month maturity. So what that means is that for every $1,000 I have invested, I'm able to fund and earn about 2,000 points in credit card spend per year. So example, in January, I fund $1,000 worth of loans, and then again in July, I fund that again because all those loans matured. So I'm able to generate $2,000 in spend. It might not sound like a huge amount of points, but if you redeem your points for an average of, say, 5 cents per point, you're getting $100 of value for every $1,000 you have tied up in Kiva loans, which works out to a 10% annual return. Pretty powerful stuff. The last and final method I'm going to go over today is buying stocks. There's a website that we've linked up in the show notes where you can fund a stock purchase up to $2,500 using a credit card. The limit is per stock per month, and there's 53 stocks to choose from. So you've got up to $75,000 or more in funding that you can use. This is definitely a lot riskier than Kiva. As you might remember from the top of the episode, I mentioned that Kiva has a 98.88% repayment rate. So there is some risk to making Kiva loans, but you're not likely to lose your shirt. The stock company that allows credit card transactions to purchase stocks is called Loyal3, and they don't process their transactions in real time. So you're not necessarily getting the price that you see when you execute the trade order. I haven't personally tried this strategy, and there are lots of easier, less risky ways to generate spend. So I'd recommend starting out with some of those other techniques, especially if you're new to travel hacking. That being said, if you're looking to invest anyways, it could be a great opportunity to be able to fund your stock portfolio by making your investments via credit card every month. Also, in the show notes, I've linked to an article that goes into a lot more detail about this strategy. It seems like there are some people out there that are doing a ton of this and are basically funding a large volume of transactions with credit cards and then immediately liquidating those stocks. So if you guys do try that out, definitely get in touch. Let us know how it goes. Would certainly be curious to find out how that technique's working for other folks out there. All right, that's it for today's show. This week's international jam comes from a Brazilian group called Mono Bloco. I've seen these guys a couple of times live, including the famous Mano Bloco street party during Carnival. The track is called Que Beleza, which roughly translated is How Beautiful. It was originally performed by Brazilian legend Tim Maia, or for the Brazilians, Chimi Maia. And I love the Mano Bloco version, so we're going to play you out with that. But if you do check out the show notes, the embedded Spotify track is the Chimi Maia original, and there's also a YouTube link for the Mano Bloco version. That's all for the show, guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next Wednesday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Wherever you are, travel safe. We'll see you soon. Hey Brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Erik or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week. Pra ver tudo bem mais claro.